Hey guys, welcome to the Sunday recording of the Hemp Cultivation and Science podcast. I'm really pumped to be here sharing, and as you can see by the screen and the audio, we're going over a PowerPoint slide. I'm going to make this a more frequent occurrence on the podcast. I'm creating video content to show you how to grow in certain situations, especially in an indoor tent setting or outdoors on site with a couple farms. But this is a presentation a lot of you guys don't get to see based on me traveling and doing consultation in different states. As of April 1st, New Mexico is now a recreation adult use state, and I believe that my content, a little bit of my background, I believe that organic cultivation and traceability is super important as we standardize the industry. With more and more cannabis going live, I believe that more organic farms and practices and third-party certifications are going to be more relevant to the consumer. Here's why. I'm not a big soda drinker, but when I do drink a soda, it's Dr. Pepper because Dr. Pepper is a Texas staple and that's where I'm from. But I know I can get a Dr. Pepper in any other state and it'll be the same nutrient content, same consistency, and the same effect. Regardless if it's good or bad for me, I know when I drink a Dr. Pepper, I'm going to get a standardized product. Cannabis doesn't have that luxury yet. And so what I'm advocating for and what I've done in consultation with other farms is get them a third-party certification so you can have a baseline understanding of what good practices are and the importance of what those practices are, from the value of starting a seed clean to finishing it with a product that has traceability from start all the way to the finish. So what we're going to be doing is going over the Lucky Leaf presentation that I do or I did in Albuquerque, and I'll do for clients and for any other person that's looking to get into commercial cannabis growing that wants to pursue the organic certification that's verified by the USDA and hosted by third parties. So let's jump straight into it. I believe that there's a higher cause in cannabis, and it's not just for people to use the product, enjoy THC, enjoy the cannabinoids, but rather understanding that there's alternative medicines that can be healthy and traceable to nutrient content that comes from the ground and the practices that cultivated those plants all the way up until how that material was handled to the finished product. The importance of certified organic cannabis is creating standard traceability and diverse nutrients that come from natural sources versus salt or artificial sources or synthetic sources. A little bit of background on me. I founded one of the first Texas hemp farm that was certified organic by the USDA. I come from a background of providing food for commercial systems like Cisco, HelloFresh, FreshPoint, distribution, and I build and create standard operating procedures for commercial farms. The largest I've ever worked with is a 20-acre farm that was certified organic outdoors and certified organic indoors, producing microgreens to scale. And I've created CSA agricultural solutions for people to pick up as a consumer vegetative grow boxes for people that want to eat healthier, enjoy that Saturday farmers market vibe, and provided for chefs throughout the DFW Metroplex. I currently am consulting for groups that want to grow utilizing a unique soil blend that I'm manufacturing out of North Texas. And I've hosting the Hemp Cultivation and Science podcast for my LLC called Wise Green Resources, where we look at circular economics, companies that are providing products that we believe in, and I am overseeing the consumer packaged goods business, my family business, with my wife, Shada Tarabi, Restart CBD. So let's get into this. This is gonna be a lot of fun. I haven't shared this with anybody. Usually people just see it at the shows and they pay ticket admission, so this is kind of fun. So I want you to understand something as a farmer, and the reason why we're getting into this is because you want to diversify your product. You want to separate yourself from the actual crowd, which cannabis is a really great product to watch get oversaturated really quickly. One of my really good friends, Kyle Robbins, he always gets so confused on why people like cannabis products and why the market is so unique in the sense of cannabis is a commodity, but branding and identity and the culture behind it allows for so many actors and players. What you're going to find in this slideshow, what you're going to find in my beliefs, is organic certification creates a standard operating procedure across the industry. And I believe it'll eliminate bad actors over time and create a positive direction for standardization in the industry. So as a farmer, you should understand one thing, especially if you're a small scale farmer. Compost costs nothing, number one. Number two, the cannabis business is booming. So I believe, and I've seen it over the past couple of years, cannabis has continued to scale as small farmers get away from it, and it hasn't scaled with certifying bodies matching the scales. It's just been free actors and manufacturers that have great brands reaping all the benefits of the cannabis industry. It reached $92 billion last year, and that was in 2021. That means a $92 billion industry is not supported by standard practices, but rather state-run metric programs. And by standard practices, I mean certifying agents that are actually tracing each and every step for either outdoor greenhouse or indoor production. And they're not saying, hey, this plus this equals a better cannabis product, but rather they're just trying to keep up with the production of terpene profiles and extracts and distillates that come from the plant. So with $92 billion out there, how can you grab a piece of that pie? And let's just say you have some agricultural experience. You may have gone and sold, lettuces or leafy greens to the marketplace, but cannabis is very, very different because you have to have a brand and a tribe around you to get a fair market value. Because if you go based on, excuse me, sorry, I do the Pomodoro effect when I'm actually talking or studying, and that was my alarm for the Pomodoro. We can get into that in a different thing. But my point is, cannabis is this really tricky thing to where if you're going to market with it, what is it going to be? So how do you separate yourself from the pack? It's either you create a really outstanding brand or you get certifications that make sure that your product has validity and good claims based on its safeness for consumption. Because we all remember, we're growing a crop for consumption. We're not growing it for life or for novelty. We're growing it for life. So according to that MJ Biz Daily study, it's gone up 30% and it'll continue to grow as more states go online. So what does that mean for you as a farmer? Does it mean that you need to go get an organic certification? No, not at all. You can create a brand, you can create a tribe, you can create that without having a third party look at your books and look at your practices. But I'm advocating for you to be proactive in doing that before the market makes you. Any large manufacturing process, any large company makes you go get audited to make sure that you're doing the kosher things and doing the right things based on the market standards, which there are not in cannabis yet. They've just been implemented by states that have green lighted. They have not actually had federal interventions like they've done in modern commercial food production agriculture. So my advocation is do it not only to go get yourself a slice of that pie, but do it for consumer safety, and then also do it because it's inevitable based on what agriculture is today for food production, and cannabis is gonna follow suit, if not more regulated. So, gosh, all right, this was really fun. So I actually found, I think it's Ultra Health LLC did an MPG audit of the 2021 season of medical cannabis in New Mexico. I use this statistic because it's fascinating to think that Texas, where I reside, where I office out of, and where I live, continues to avoid getting tax revenue, and we prefer to send our citizens to other states to give them infrastructure and critical tax revenue that they will make off of a plant and product and gummies and anything to, satiate that cannabinoid demand that people have. So $557 million is going to be the total cannabis market for New Mexico in 2022. I know they went rec. It was like 3 days ago, April 1st. This was recorded April 4th. And they reported reported sales for day one, less than 12 hours, was $1.4 million. I think they will absolutely shatter this projection that was put out there by the MPG consultation group. But with all that being said, the expectations are this market in New Mexico will be $782 million. What percentage of that will be certified organic, and what percentage of that will actually have traceability to where you can say from seed, soil to seed to product, this product is kosher, it has traceability, it checks all the boxes from sustainable to healthy to having a good COA to having good cannabinoids to being a product that actually is audited and verified by other parties other than the brands itself. and that creates a healthier consumer good that we'll get more into. But that's a fun fact. $557 million year one. That's medical and recreation combined. I think they're going to shatter those expectations in New Mexico based on other states traveling to get the Land of Enchantment's marijuana experience. So I always like to do this in any of my presentations or consultation groups, is kind of give you my history and background so you can be more comfortable with what I'm saying and understand where I'm coming from and understand the platform that I built to take you to this point. I come from commercial food production. So in 2014, I was lucky to get into a relationship with a group that was founding a greenhouse project in North Texas, and I became a partner in that and the manager for the LLC. It's called Tech Select, and we had a goal of creating highly effective environmental systems utilizing controlled environment ag, or CEA ag, to create a food production system next to an urban area. That urban area was Fort Worth. Our production system was 17 miles out of Fort Worth, with a goal of creating low mileage, fresh herbs, microgreens, leafy greens, and salad mixes in Texas heat. We did that. It was outstanding. We did it for 6 years up until 2020 before we broke ground into cannabis. But we also took on projects in different countries pertaining to South America and Honduras, Canada and Cochrane, where it was very, very cold. We're building a food farm up there, and then also different states. New York was the one, and Washington is where we had experience. And we did consultation not only for microgreen production, but leafy green production, and then cannabis production, from seedling all the way to finish and curing, and then branding. Some of our biggest clients that we had was Cisco, Fresh Point, HelloFresh, Brothers Produce, and then Benny Keith Produce. We learned, once we started and built out our greenhouse and our farm system, how to adhere to the standards of those large corporate food distributors. And with that being said, we transitioned to organic as we got into cannabis, because we wanted to take everything that we knew about cannabis or food production and standardize the cannabis production in the exact same manner. So keep in mind, cannabis is still federally regulated, even though the 2018 Farm Bill allowed for us to grow cannabis on a commercial scale in Texas utilizing 0.3% compliant seeds. We don't have any oversight or program regulation that creates standardization across the board. So what that means is we do get regulated by the TDA, but there are no other companies that come in and said, hey, this was healthy, this was good, this is the par, this is what it means to be a good cannabis brand. So we as innovators, Tech Select, myself and my partner at the time, said, what can we do to be ahead of the curve? And it was kind of the, it's kind of a positive, but we were way ahead of what the market is going to be and what the market is and what the market is going to be 10 years from now. We created an organic system, got the farm certified. We're on the USDA database, but since the market was such the Wild West, we were a good story. We weren't a good product. And so what that means is we standardized organic practices, showed how to do it, provided a proof of concept, but the market wasn't ready for it yet. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But this is a little bit of my intro, my background, and okay. And as you can see in the top right corner, we had our lettuce production. So we ended up building a 4,000 square foot deep water pond to maximize our lettuce production for chefs. We built vertical seedling tables and trays. We built out a system in New York where we had a completely automated deep water ebb and flow system that was harvested by robots. And then we had and experimented with different vertical growing apparatuses and different horizontal plane growths in the greenhouse to maximize production. It was great. Food production isn't my bread and butter. It's my heart to grow food for people. It's outstanding. But cannabis was kind of what we were looking at based on the green rush in Texas. Let's go to the next slide. Doing it now. This slide's a little bit out of turn. I think I edited this a little bit later. But another point of who I am is I have studied agriculture, and I am an agronomist by training, not by education. I was educated by Stephen F. Austin State University. I have an undergrad in biology, and I was going to go into human sciences, but I never did that based on timing in life. But I got into agriculture feet first after I got out of school by signing up for wolfing. I would highly recommend any of you, if you're young, old, go look up organic wolfing farms and then go do that experience and learn about agriculture from hands-on experience by reaching out to these groups. It's outstanding. I was one of the first Texas farms to be certified organic in producing cannabis, and I will hang my hat on that by being the first Texas farm to ever grow cannabis organically based on third-party audits. My whole goal when I did that was take everything I knew about food production and apply it to cannabis so people can have safe, transparent products that had low food mileage and traceability from start to finish. Blah, 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 blah. Next slide. Awesome. So you're here and you've been sitting here listening to me and listening to Hemp Cultivation and Science podcast because you believe that there's a higher cause, and not just because you want to grow something or you want to get high, but rather that cannabis is medicine and it should be standardized like medicine should. So we're going to go over what it means to actually be all natural, what organic means, what pesticide free means, and how third-party audits can make your farm that successful farm that has traceability and it has clarity and doesn't hide behind, fun branding or corporate advertising or marketing words, but rather a solid product that has an agricultural background and a product to match where the roots of that plant came from, figuratively and literally at the same time. Why does it matter? I mean, there's all these buzzwords, like when you go into Whole Foods, you're going to get confused and bombarded by all these things. But when you really look at it, you look at the ingredients list and say, oh man, I don't like this. I don't like this. What is that? I can't pronounce that. Cannabis is the same thing, but there isn't regulation yet. There's no company and there's no third party or government agency that's requiring nutrient content or ingredients list or where this came from or 100% traceability back to the farm it came from. There are too many brokers, bad actors, and farmers that will prevent crop failure by spraying glyphosate on it to knock down insects and then sell that product for the profit based on what they invested in it versus actually creating a product that is safe for human consumption. And that's one of the biggest plagues on cannabis industry today is that there's no certifications or third parties or federal agencies that are saying, hey, remember, we're letting this blind eye happen, but you guys need to be self-regulating. And I believe organic is the way that this market and this industry can self-regulate and eliminate bad players and bad products and continue to progress the industry in a positive manner. So we're going to go over the roots of the organic movement and why it happened. We're going to go over the allure and what I discovered when I was going to market in Texas and then other legal medical states. Texas is not a good example because that's is a project that I should have done 10 years from now, not when I started in 2020. We're going to go over the sustainability potential in cannabis. So we're going to talk about farm systems and what I utilize to lower costs to produce good cannabis on farm. And I'm going to tell you how I did it from start to finish and what you can do to implement it on your system utilizing either AgriLife extensions, friends, or rentals, or purchasing equipment and finding circular economics to produce on farm. And last but not least, what can you do to become certified organic or make your farm more organic moving forward prior to getting a certification? It's not for everybody. I'm going to tell you it costs money and it will be something that's implemented in the future for the industry. So the more proactive you can be, the better off you're going to be to produce good products for people that want that USDA seal. Let's get into it. So getting into it, we've already gone over some of the facts, and one of the facts that we have really discussed is where the market's going to be in 2026. But currently, what I've seen, and the Visual Capitalist and the Green Organic Dutchman released some numbers pertaining to a premium that is offered for USDA organic certified cannabis. It's a 26% premium. So that means for every dollar spent, you're going to get 26 more cents based on if it has a USDA organic symbol or not. Is that true for every cannabis market? No, not at all. Organic is an educational form of a premium. So if you don't understand what organic means, you're not going to get that premium. But if you're a cannabis brand that advocates for it, that your demographic wants it, and you educate people based on what it is, you will get that premium because once people go organic, it's really hard to go back based on the understanding and the uncertainty of where that product came from and what was applied to that product or where the nutrients were derived to create that product and the handling from start to finish. To be honest, that Grandview study That's a little bit of an undershoot based on what I've seen so far with recreation going live and more states going green. It'll be over $320 billion by 2030. I think cannabis will be one of the leading crops and leading consumer goods that's going to have a sin tax attached to it in the future. One of the interesting parts that I found when I was putting this slide together and doing these presentations at Lucky Leaves and for groups and clients is that only 0.1% of all of the U.S. cropland certified organic. What percentage of that will be cannabis? And I can tell you already, it's going to be a micro fraction. Let's go to the next slide. So I told you guys, we're going to go over the roots of the organic movement and what it is. So number one, we're going to knock out what the definition of organic certificate or what organic means by a legal definition and why organic is important to consumer health and safety. So what is organic agriculture? Let's just go straight into the boring but just completely on point definition that is organic, that all these third parties use, that the USDA recognizes when you produce a crop based on these standards. Organic agriculture is an ecological production and management system that produces and enhances biodiversity, biological cycles, soil, biological activity, and it is based on the minimal use of off-farm inputs and on-management practices that restore, maintain, and enhance ecological harmony. So that was actually the definition presented by the USDA National Organic Standards Board, and that's what every third party emulates their systems and guidance and their standards to. Pretty much what that is in layman's terms or non-agricultural terms is the use of non-synthetic fertilizers, use of non-restricted pesticides, and the use of non-genetically modified genetics, inputs, or anything else on farm. By that definition, organic practices pretty much minimize impact on farm and maximize environmental protection and sustainability on farm. Pretty much what they're doing is trying to say, hey, let's lower the footprint of agriculture by making sure that we create circular economic systems and sustainable production models that can scale in harmony with nature, not excluding nature, which, if y'all know anything about history of agriculture, when you monocrop or you work against Mother Nature, she'll find a way to destroy you and make you pay for it for years to come. So back to the point, it's a little bit of a paper trail, and that's all organic certification is. It requires you as a farmer to document everything on farm based on what your third party needs and demands from you so you can have traceability from start to finish. That means signing land affidavits, getting lawyers involved to make sure that you have a prior land history that outlines any kind of use, and making sure that you've never put anything toxic or had a Superfund site where your agricultural system is. It requires on-site inspections, either biannually or annually, by third-party auditors that you will pay for their time to make sure that your product gets that certification so you can ensure consumer safety along every step of production as you get a finished product out from your farm brand. Organic agriculture, it creates integrated environmentally sound systems to where you're actually promoting biodiversity versus depending on reactive steps. It's preventative agriculture, not reactive agriculture. I would highly recommend any of you that are getting into producing cannabis or any kind of food crop that's going to be organic to look at the USDA 101 allowed and prohibited substances. Keep in mind, cannabis is not it's a federally illegal crop, and there are no regulations on pesticides, just state guidelines. So using any kind of pesticides on cannabis is technically illegal because no pesticide company has the ability to use or study cannabis because it's a federally regulated crop. So it's pretty fascinating that there is no certifications or no state bodies that are stepping in and saying, hey, we probably need to come up with more regulatory reinforcement on what this crop is because people are consuming it at such a high level. All right, this is a very hot take. I'm gonna be a jerk for just a second, but let me tell you a secret. Green isn't always green. You want to know why? Because if there's money to be made, there are corners to be cut if there's nobody looking over your shoulder. And in agriculture, it is just no exception. I'm a hippie at heart. Love walking barefoot in the grass. I understand the ecological systems to produce outdoor crops, utilizing resources from natural sources, and love the Grateful Dead. But all of that doesn't mean that I'm creating a healthy product that doesn't have something on it without a certifying agent saying, hey, this is Sage's practice, here's his books, this is how his farm operates. And let me tell you, the cannabis industry is a culprit for massive resourcing waste, massive energy consumption, and the pollution of waterways based on terrible nutrient management and fertigation that has run off into other ecological systems. So cannabis isn't green in the sense of organic or healthy or natural, in the sense of cannabis isn't the best crop that to be produced. Let's just be honest with each other here. More people should be producing food. So when you're producing cannabis, it should be under the guidelines of organic standards so you can have good stewardship and sustainability for your system. Cannabis and agricultural production pertaining to cannabis has been linked to climate change. You look at any study from California, loss of biodiversity. You see farmers just knock out a field that's been alfalfa for so long, put down soil, put down these rows, and they're allowing for monoculture to take over, and you're seeing a huge pest increase. Cannabis is very energy intensive. It's a plant that wants to be perfected, and it's a bit of a weakling of a plant when it comes down to it, and it requires a huge amount of HVAC, a huge amount of dehumidification and humidification, and that is a lot of kilowatts of energy that's taken off the grid that can be used for other things. Cannabis has been linked to soil erosion. Once you knock out a field for monocropping, and if you don't do it in ground, you're putting literal pots on the ground, you're creating a parking lot, to say the least. And that means you're going to lose biodiversity, root density, and any kind of any kind of insect or natural, system won't be happy there. Cannabis also has been linked to increased pesticide uses and resistance of pests. I mean, honestly, if you look at cannabis production, you're going to get two major pests, mites and aphids, and people are spraying them, and every subsequent generation is getting stronger. So aphid infestations outdoors and indoors are getting tenfold worse based on monoculturing and not utilizing preventative IPM programs. And obviously, I touched on this earlier, there's a huge amount of pollution based on failed cannabis crops or successful cannabis crops, over nutrients, waterways being polluted by too many fertilizers and too many cannabis producers in the same area, and a lack of topsoil based on tillage. So that's my spiel about why green isn't always green. So continuing with the doom and gloom type of scenario, I want to continue to reach back to why organic agriculture is good, regardless of it being a cannabis organic agriculture, is we're losing arable land for farming practices. So literally the world's lost a third of its topsoil and cultivation land based on populations being more and more dense and our demand for agriculture, and conventional agriculture, that is. Water shortages are becoming a problem. Again, look at California. They're having to restrict water, and I know Colorado's doing it, and I know New Mexico is doing it, because cannabis is a huge drinker. And let's be honest with each other here. Cannabis is a crop that doesn't feed people, but nourishes people and is good for society. But without regulation, it could be bad. And especially if you have an unlimited amount of producers and the market collapses, the amount of resources put into that doesn't match the actual demand or the revenues produced by that land, and it's a bad situation. Oil prices are going out the fucking roof, and excuse me for swearing, but if you look at what the petrodollar is, what's happening in the petrodollar and what's happening in the world, America is losing the presence of currency. So to be able to produce with smaller footprint, utilizing circular economics, and utilizing less intensive or conventional means like linked to petroleum, you'll produce more food with a lower cost based on not depending on petroleum usage. Sustainability is crucial when it comes down to organics, because you're highlighting all the problems that can happen before or after the crop, and utilizing a system that's not reactionary but proactive, and utilizing other inputs from other industries to create a closed loop of carbon diversion and circular economics, from taking one waste from a product and turning it into a revenue generating product from that same waste. So why am I so crazy about organic agriculture when it comes down to cannabis production? Because a more sustainable approach for a luxury crop, and I'm going to say it, it is not a right. Cannabis is a luxury crop that should demand luxury prices and third-party audits that require, or third-party audits that verify if it's a good or a bad crop. And to meet that demand that more and more people want and more states are going to go adult use, we should create a standard system that allows for cannabis to be highly regulated and a very, 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 very good crop. It has added health and safety benefits. So cannabis, regardless of what you think about it, it's good and bad for people. It's good if it's untouched and doesn't have any residual chemicals on it when it's ingested or processed down the line, but it's bad for people when you have no certifications and no auditors looking over the shoulder, because bad actors exist everywhere in every industry. Less environmental impact. So if you're working organically, you're actually being proactive with the world, even if you're indoors. I mean, honestly, one of my soil companies and not my soil companies, one of the companies I work with, it takes coffee grounds, composts it, and then uses it as a soil media versus all the shipping and carbon footprint of peat moss or cocoa coir, and that's a less environmental impact. And that's taking one man's waste from an industry and turning it into a value-added product down the line. Organic agriculture promotes biodiversity. It promotes, using swells, banker plants, non-cash crops to be able to produce nutrients for your cash crop, and it creates proactive thinking versus the reactionary thinking of the conventional farmer. Organic agriculture produces community support. It gives you less of a chance for contaminants. It is smarter farming practices. It's utilizing things that work with nature and not against nature. And it's helped improve soil over time. And we can get into that in more details, or you can take one of my classes pertaining to cover cropping and increasing organic matter in clay soils, which I've done in Texas. But it presents a solution to a problem that we've had since we started commercializing and doing conventional agriculture for food production. And cannabis will follow the same route unless we take a better route, which I believe is organic production. So the allure, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I go to Whole Foods and Central Market because they have an increased amount of organic produce, because I do not want to bioaccumulate pesticides because of lazy farming and because of crappy produce that's being grown. I know when I go to farmers markets, I talk to farmers that have their hands in the dirt, they got their boots on and they're dirty, and they grow organically because that's the only way they know, and that's the only way they can afford, because once you go conventional, you depend significantly on the conventional systems that are presented to you. Chances are you are a microbrew drinker. And what does that mean? That means you go to a microbrewery and you like supporting your small brew guys. Let's talk about the dudes that have the IPA beards and the hipster glasses and they're inked up. You support those guys because they make great beer and it makes you feel good. You want to know why? They're artisan, they're craft, they're doing things at a high level for small production. Cannabis will follow the same suit. So small farmers utilizing certified techniques and third-party audits will create a more potent and a healthy product that has what everybody wants: clean cannabinoids, clean THC, and then clean distillate products that have no bioaccumulation of pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, or heavy metal residues. So I want you to think about craft coffee the same way you think about craft cannabis. I want you to think about terroir and premium wine the same way you think about terroir and premium cannabis. I want you to think about that double, triple Belgian IPA quad Helles lager that you get from your favorite brewery. And I want you to think about craft cannabis because they have the same allure. It's small batch, it's craft, it works with nature or the community, and it's a better product that isn't bastardized by conventional production. It's unique but traceable. And that's what I want you to think about. They've linked organic produce to having an increased nutrient and Brix count and potency. Well, potency by more nutrient availability in produce. But for cannabis, it's the exact same thing. So keep thinking about that as we continue through the presentation. So with organic agriculture, what I found when I transitioned away from just doing GAP and Primus certified food production, I got my attention to detail meter maxed out, because as a farmer, I believe I understood every system, but organic certification flips that on its head and makes you work with other systems that you didn't know that were biologically needed in an indoor, greenhouse, or outdoor setting. It creates and promotes this idea of utilizing more and not bringing any more amendments into your farm system, but rather utilizing what you have and creating circular economics to provide value added nutrients, synergies, and opportunities on and off farm. It created high quality products. The first year of cannabis production, I had breweries and smoke shops and independent consumers on farmers markets buying my products because they have never seen a hemp product that was as good a quality as mine, with high CBD and cannabinoid levels that were unmatched at the time during 2020's year of production. And also, organic creates social responsibility. It linked me directly to my brand, and it made me forward facing in the sense of I not only represent a product, but I represent the practices that made my story and my farm and my brand. So this attention to detail and hands-on approach is storytelling in a way that allows for you to spend the money to go get the certifications and be transparent to get that back, because you're creating content and ideas that people want to latch onto. And once they do, they can't go back to conventional. They're always going to have in their head, I wonder if this is organic, or organic is important to me now because of blank, insert blank organic farms. Circular economics is something that's really huge to me, because it creates a smaller environmental footprint that adds to your brand storytelling, and it promotes organic practices. Social responsibility is tied into those two things, attention to detail and circular economics, and branding with those factors and with those things in mind creates a really unique approach to packaging, to storytelling, and the events that you participate in as you get your product to market. So based on the allure of organic, you can also see there's a higher price. When I was going to market, the industry average was $10.02, based on the amount of sales that I had. But you can fetch a 26% more price increase. So you can go to market with a higher price based on the certifications, because people trust you more, and you have a seal that says, hey, this is my paperwork, this is my system, this is what I demand, I'm not messing around. So you can get a higher price based on being organic certified, and we can talk about that more and actually get into the details on another course that I have called Creating Your Organic System Plan. And it does have marketing that links to, hey, this is what your competitor is, but you're not paying for that competitor, you're paying for mine because of increased cannabinoid percentage, increased flavor and aroma, and traceability that you're paying for, so your consumer knows that it's a lower risk to buy this product. And we can talk about that a little later. Next slide. So with that in mind, and understanding that there's no regulation and going organic requires you to be self-regulated, take a look at these labels. I want you to screenshot this and then notice what I put on there. I put my story, I put the cannabinoid content, and a link to the COA utilizing a QR code technology that goes to my landing page, so there is traceability. That links to a third-party auditor that's linked to a lab. That lab's linked to my certifier, and I just created a circle of accountability. So that's what you want to look for in a cannabis product. That's what you want to look for producing a cannabis product label. And everybody that grows a crop, you've got to understand what your finished product's going to look like, and this is what ours look like. I use a UAV blocking technology in my PET recyclable plastic with a childproof lid. I took and emulated everything that's required from medical states to be able to self-regulate myself and give myself a better product going to market. It's called clear labeling, transparency, and compliance, and that's what organic makes you do. Going to the next slide right now. And next. So you're going to be blown away by this, but my organic certification linked me to 3 major players. 1 was a giant brewery in North Texas. 2 was a huge dairy farm in West Texas. And 3 was the city of Fort Worth got behind my coffee recycling program for my farm, as well as diverted industrial and landscaping tree waste to my farm to be able to put in my system and compost. So what does that mean? The city of Fort Worth gave me a letter and recommended every coffee shop that I visited to give me coffee grounds if they didn't already have a contract for it, so I can divert waste from landfills and be able to use it on a farming system. That's the thinking that was allowed by me pursuing an organic certification and getting my farm certified by a third party. The city of Fort Worth got behind me, as well as small business owners, because they understood what I was trying to accomplish after they were educated. I vet with large breweries like Rahr & Sons, Martin House Brewing Company, False Idol Brewing Company, Panther City Brewing Company, and gosh, oh my gosh, and Pathfinder Brewing Company out of Weatherford, to be able to create, Parker County, excuse me, to create a system for spent grain pickups for my compost pile and for my fields. And that was an outstanding relationship, because I then vended at those relationships and created other brand and community opportunities through those breweries. I worked with vineyards to be able to get sugars for composting as well, where I would take their agricultural products in off season and be able to compost them during season to create a topsoil and create organic matter on my clay fields. And that was an outstanding relationship, because it allowed for me to open up my books and community opportunity for new market or new marketing to new consumers that wanted cannabis but were more into wine. It was outstanding. I worked with landscapers, and they dumped tree trimmings and clippings and mulches for me to use for weed protection around the greenhouse and on farm. I worked with dairy farms to be able to create compost. And all of these things were because I went through an organic certifier and I created a system plan that I wanted to lower my bottom line by creating accountability and nutrients from natural sources. What that means, long and short of it, you might not be able to do that, but you've got to think outside the box in the sense of organic certification is taking natural things and putting them into a system to create a natural product. So think about that. And I did that, and that's kind of what founded Comanche Compost Company, which we can talk about on a different thing. That's the soil company that I sit as an executive on. And through my research, through my organic certification, this product created an opportunity for me to get into more consultation and sales of a pretty much it's going to be a carbon neutral soil by 2025. All right, let's we're not stopping. We got 6 more slides. Let's start from the top and work our way down this sequence of events. Using on-farm resources, which organic makes you do, either indoors or outdoors. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish and your pest pressures, but I composted during the winter, got a bunch of landscape materials and mulches, and created a bunch of poop for my summer-spring season, outdoors and indoors, and this is kind of what it goes down to. I got dairy compost from a farm for nothing, just mileage and time and food and gas. I got rotten straw delivered because some hay farmers couldn't use it and they dropped it off, and all I had to do was labor and cover and wet. I got coffee grounds from various coffee shops in the city of Fort Worth to add to the nitrogen profile of my dairy manure and get it biologically active and raise the temperature of it during off season, during composting season. I got mushrooms from Mushroom Farm to increase the diversity of products or diversity of materials in my compost, and it created mushrooms, which increases the biological activity in your field and in your pots during the season, and creates an amazing compost for indoors and outdoors that is biologically active, alive, and pest-free, because it got to that 212-degree temperature that you want during composting. But that's how we did it. We can get into more details, or you can take one of my courses if you want to learn how to do it on your system. I'll explain it from start to finish and be your consultant for it. But this is how we did it in Texas. So this is another little bit of how we did it. I ended up dropping off probably 5 or 6 of those IBC totes throughout the city of Fort Worth and Parker County for different breweries to put their grains in, as long as they had a forklift to put in the back of my truck. It was good. I dropped off a trailer at the vineyard so I can get all their grapes spent in season. I didn't just leave that there because I was using it to get dairy manure in off season as well. And this added to really great relationships, community building, and fun stories for my brand, and it added to the value of what that organic certification meant to me. Oh, and this is a False Idol Brewing Company. So one of the grain bins I dropped off in North Ocean Hills, they actually did a beer, a New England IPA with my CBG flower, and it was immaculate. Tastes absolutely amazing. Go to the next slide. So with all that composting aside, you got to make sure that your practices match what you're doing. All that compost would go to waste if I wasn't doing no-till, organic agriculture, outdoors and indoors. So as you can see, that's the compost I put into a $900 manure spreader that I got rebuilt by this old guy that collects farm equipment and repairs it. Outstanding find there. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. It was good for our scale. It could do 10 acres no problem. But you can see I spread manure, I cover cropped, I did soil testing at every step. So I would do it in the spring, I would do it in the fall, I would do it prior to planting and after planting to see where my nutrients are at. And the compost that I made was to put organic material and nutrients back into the field for when I'm ready to grow or just to replenish what I took out. Because remember, when you're farming outdoors, you're taking nutrients out and taking them to market. And when you're farming indoors, you have to replenish the nutrients and keep pests out by creating systems and IPM programs that do that. But you can see just scoop poop in, hook the trailer up, scoop poop out, that type of thing. When you're at an organic system, you've got to find ways to continue to nutrient feed outdoors and indoors. You can do cover crops in both. Outdoors is a little bit more difficult because you're doing a spring cover crop terminating it prior to spring planting, with winter cover crops going after your spring harvest or late summer harvest going into the fall. I used 2 different cover crops, spring cover crop cocktail and a winter cover crop cocktail. But the point of it was to hold my field to be ready to maximize soil retention, so I didn't lose any topsoil because I'm inactive land. And I was green manuring. That means I was putting crop varieties in cover crop cocktails that fix phosphorus down, fix nitrogen down, and promoted biodiversity, so I didn't get a one insect problem, but rather attracted different natural predators to be able to live and overwinter and then be ready for the next spring as I got ready to plant again. I rented that seeder. It was a pain in the ass, but I went to the Texas Department of Agriculture, called my extension agency, and for $75, I got to go drive, take it 10 miles an hour down a road for about an hour and a half to where I needed to be, and then I cover cropped for a low cost, which I just got organic seeds, so I didn't have any GMO problems in my field. And before you know it, I got a diverse vetch, radish, peas, rye, turnips, clovers, and a bunch of different pollinators and a bunch of different insects to make sure that I didn't have pest pressures going into the next season. And it's really great because it increased my organic material, and then it helped me mitigate the clay problem and the water problems I was having in lower spots in my fields. So cover cropping, composting, organic certification, it's a whole lot. But guys, this is the result that you want. You want organic cover crops to be mowed, terminated, and then disked into your beds and then planted so you have the most nutrients going down for the best crop possible. And this is what it is. I used rain flow planters and irrigators after I mowed and made sure that my crops were ready to go. And I let them decay and be composted into the field as I amended it. And then I made these amazing plasticulture rows using organic plastic. And we can get into that a little bit more. This is the drone shot that we had of our fields. We were ending up doing 2 feet in between each row, but this is the plasticulture during, I think 2 weeks after planting. This is routine plants on the very far right. This was one of our 6-foot cannabis plants that we topped and culled out. But this was our overview, top left, of what our farm looked like. That's 3 acres planted with plasticulture. That's the result you want, because we were getting a good probably 5 to 6 pounds of wet weight during that harvesting time. And actually it was 5 to 6 pound cured, like prior to cured bud, but this is a 20-pound wet plant, right before trimming. It's outstanding. And these are all certified organic, using these practices to create a brand story. Guys, you've hung in with me this whole time, and I'm honored to get to this point. And I hope you understand the importance of organic certification. If you want to talk more about it, if you have any questions, please go to my website, hempcultivationscience.com or Wise Green Solutions LLC, and understand what certification is and get your farm certified. Get your product certified. Hire me on as a consultant so I can give you all the knowledge that I've acquired through trial and error over the past 10 years of agronomy. And sign up for some of my courses so you can be a better brander of your products, farmer of your system, and be a steward of the world, because organic certification is where cannabis production will be and where it should be going to create clarity for your consumer and clarity for the market. Guys, thank you so much. Again, this is Sage Howell with Hemp Cultivation Science and Wise Green Solutions LLC. Happy growing, happy spring. Get outside, grow good plants, and make sure you're asking every time you go to a dispensary, is this organic?